You know that feeling when you just want a bit of colorful escapism?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like you load up a fresh save file, pick your little starter companion, and wander through some tall grass.
Right. You just kind of settle into that familiar, comforting loop.
Exactly. Because there is a built-in social contract there, you know?
Yeah.
You play by the rules, the game rewards you with a dopamine hit, and you slowly, happily save the digital world.
It's a very carefully curated ecosystem of progression. I mean, the boundaries are set by the developers to ensure a specific, balanced emotional journey, from novice to champion.
Right, but occasionally you stumble across a player who doesn't just ignore that social contract.
They completely shred it.
Yeah, they shred it, set it on fire, and like replace it with a full-blown psychological manifesto. And today's deep dive is about one of those players.
This is a wild one.
It really is. We're looking at a hyper-specific, genuinely unhinged save file from Pokemon Scarlet, dated May 17th, 2026. And this belongs to a trainer who utterly refused to use anything in the entire Paldea region except the evolution Pokemon, the normal hedgehog, Eevee.
Eevee and its 8 distinct evolutions.
Just them. Nothing else.
And, to call this a self-imposed challenge would be doing a massive disservice to the sheer scale of what we are analyzing today.
Oh, totally.
Because we have an extraordinary stack of sources to pull from for you all today. We've got the trainer's intensely detailed personal retrospective journals.
Which are, frankly, terrifying.
They really are. We also have a meticulously logged roster and an exclusive investigative report from the Paldea News Network, or PNN.
So we are basically examining the intersection of extreme psychological projection, absolute in-game luxury, and a very dark subversion of fictional biology.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, imagine treating a brightly colored video game like you are the last line of defense against the literal apocalypse.
It's intense. And to even begin to process the mechanics of what this trainer accomplished, we kind of have to isolate the ideology driving the entire run.
Right, like, why subject yourself to this level of restriction?
Well, his personal journals outline a concept he calls a, quote, documented cosmic certainty.
A documented cosmic certainty.
Yeah, he projected this rock-solid, non-negotiable narrative onto the game. Basically, he believed that failing to collect male Eevees under impossibly strict, luxurious conditions would precipitate the catastrophic ruin of the universe.
He genuinely wrote that the planet was at risk of, I think the phrase was ultimate villain exploitation.
By inferior species, yes.
So basically, any creature that wasn't an Eevee was an active threat to existence.
Exactly. But the vocabulary he uses is what's really fascinating here, because he doesn't pull his apocalyptic dread from the lore of the Pokemon universe at all.
No, not even a little bit.
He imports it wholesale from an entirely different franchise. He relies heavily on metaphors from Sonic the Hedgehog,
Right.
but not just any Sonic game. He zeroes in on a very specific fan-made project called Sonic the Hedgehog, Project 06.
I had to read that section of the journal 3 times to make sure I was processing it correctly.
It's a lot to take in.
He is playing Pokemon Scarlet, wandering around the sunny, vibrant region of Paldea, but his psychological framework is rooted in a fan-fixed version of a notorious 2006 Sonic game.
Yeah.
How does a person's brain even make that leap? Like, seriously.
Well, it makes sense when you look at the concept of psychological transference in gaming.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the original 2006 Sonic the Hedgehog release is infamous for being fundamentally broken. I mean, it was rushed, riddled with glitches, and suffered from catastrophic physics engines.
Right, it's basically legendary for how bad it was.
Exactly. Now, Project 06 was this monumental undertaking by an Argentine programmer named Ian Morris, who goes by Chaos X.
Right.
And he spent years rebuilding the game in the Unity engine. He fixed the physics, restored the roster, and essentially healed a trauma in the gaming community.
Okay, so how does that connect to Paldea?
This trainer looked at Paldea and saw the original broken 2006 Sonic game.
Wow.
He viewed the entire Paldea ecosystem as a glitch. Paldea isn't a functioning world to him at all. It's a corrupted file.
So all the non-Eevee Pokemon roaming around, they aren't local fauna to him.
No, not at all. He explicitly compares them to apocalyptic entities from the Sonic universe, like Solaris and Mephiles.
That is why.
He requires these apocalyptic stakes to combat the banality of mastery.
The banality of mastery.
Yeah. When a highly analytical player masters a game's mechanics, the intended narrative friction just disappears. Becoming the regional champion is no longer an engaging goal, you know?
I would say because it's too easy.
Exactly. So by defining the game world as fundamentally broken and identifying the local wildlife as reality-destroying glitches, he gives himself permission to exert a sociopathic level of control over his environment.
That explains why he actually equated his Eevees to the 7 Chaos Emeralds.
Yes, exactly.
He included an image in his journal of Shadow the Hedgehog, bathed in the aura of the Chaos Emeralds, defeating the godlike entity Solaris. And he explicitly stated that hoarding Eevees was the exact same frantic, reality-anchoring necessity.
It completely transforms the act of catching a Pokemon. It's no longer a whimsical journey. It's an act of cosmic stabilization.
The Eevees are the only stabilizing force in a disintegrating universe.
Which perfectly sets the stage for how he initiated this campaign. Because the genesis of this run, it demonstrates a staggering lack of empathy for the game's intended emotional beats.
I was actually stunned by how brutal the opening hour was. Because, you boot up the game and you are immediately presented with your starter.
Right.
It's supposed to be your digital best friend. And in Paldea, one of the choices is Quaxley.
The water-type duckling. A creature designed specifically to engender immediate affection and loyalty from the player.
And what does our trainer do with this carefully engineered companion?
Mr. Monroe.
He writes that keeping Quaxley would render his entire existence worthless. He doesn't just put the duck in a digital storage box. He declares that Quaxley must face the guillotine or electric chair.
To make way for the true monarchs.
Exactly. He permanently discarded the starter.
He is purging the intended emotional connection right out of the gate. He wants to establish a blank slate of absolute ruthlessness.
And once the game's designated protagonist-companion dynamic was executed, like literally and figuratively, he moved to South Province Area 2, near Cortondo.
And his logs indicate he spent exactly 25 minutes pacing the tall glass there.
25 minutes isn't a long time.
No, it's not.
But what he accomplished in that window is statistically absurd. He caught 8 Eevees.
8 of them.
But he didn't just catch 8 random Eevees. He curated a highly specific demographic. He caught only male Eevees.
Right. And the statistical probability of encountering 8 Eevees in that time frame and having every single one roll the male-gender ratio is steep.
It's crazy steep.
But honestly, it pales in comparison to the method of capture. This is where his manifesto transitions from cosmic paranoia into a thesis on extreme luxury.
Yes. Because he caught all 8 using exclusively Master Balls. He has to pause here and really dig into the mechanics of this. Because anyone who knows the franchise is probably screaming at their audio player right now.
Oh, absolutely.
A player is given a maximum of maybe 1 or 2 of these items per playthrough.
Right. They have a 100% capture rate.
They never fail. So to possess 999 of them, which is the absolute hard limit in the game's code, before you've even beaten the first gym, that is functionally impossible through normal gameplay.
Which is exactly why the immediate assumption from the broader community and envious rivals and onlookers in Paldea was that he was cheating.
Right.
The accusations were rampant. People were claiming save data editing, cloning glitches, third-party hardware injections, you name it.
But his journals vehemently deny any glitch exploitation.
Strongly deny it.
He actually calls those accusations pathetic. He claims they come from people lacking strategic vision.
Yes.
And he insists that he relied on a massive international online trading network.
Think about the logistical nightmare required to achieve that legitimately, though.
It boggles the mind.
We are talking about establishing a global syndicate of trade partners, navigating international time zones, operating across Reddit boards and Discord servers, managing digital inflation.
Yeah, how do you convince hundreds of independent actors to surrender their most valuable, singular asset to you?
It requires immense manipulation.
You essentially have to play Wall Street with international traders just to flex on the early game flora and fauna.
And he called it a monument to logistics, patience, and economic dominance.
Economic dominance, wow.
To him, the Master Balls weren't just tools for catching. They were a statement of power.
Right. He wanted his glorious royal court housed in spheres that represented thousands of hours of diplomatic coordination.
Yes. It establishes his authority over the game's economy before he even engages with its combat mechanics.
And that obsession with luxury actually inverted the way he approached rarity, didn't it?
Oh, completely.
Because most players chasing prestige will spend weeks hunting for shiny variants.
Right. And the shiny Eevee in Generation 9 carries a base spawn rate of, I think it's 0.024%.
Super rare.
Extremely rare. And it features this distinct pale gray and white fur coat with dark gray eyes. completely contrasting the standard light brown palette.
Yeah.
The gaming community broadly accepts shiny hunting as the ultimate demonstration of dedication.
But our trainer actively despised the shiny variant.
Despised it.
He explicitly rejected the astronomically rare color swap. He demanded what he called the uncorrupted baseline.
The uncorrupted baseline.
Yeah, the light brown fur, the cream-colored accents, the pink paw pads.
This is a perfect example of hyper-elitism, akin to the economic concept of Veblen goods, but entirely inverted.
Wait, villain goods, what's that?
It's a type of luxury good where the demand increases as the price increases, simply because it acts as a status symbol. But here, he rejects the game-designated marker of rarity, the shiny, because relying on the game's definition of value is a form of subjugation to him.
Oh, wow.
By demanding the standard issue majesty, but locking it inside a master ball that required a global syndicate to obtain, he dictates the value system himself.
So the natural form becomes the ultimate luxury.
Precisely.
It is such a fascinating psychological flex.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, you know, I don't need a palette swap to prove my superiority. I prove my superiority through logistical dominance.
Exactly.
So, okay, he has these 8 standard issue male Eevees sitting in their incredibly expensive housing. Now he has to curate them.
Right.
The journals dedicate significant space to detailing a 175-minute evolution process.
175 minutes, spent entirely in menus.
Just staring at a screen.
Manipulating elemental stones and micromanaging environmental factors.
And to grasp why this process is so intensive, we kind of need to analyze the specific biology of the Eevee, right?
Yes. The scientific consensus in the source material categorizes them as possessing highly unstable DNA.
See, when you hear unstable DNA, you immediately think of like a genetic defect or a terminal illness.
In human biology, certainly that would be the assumption.
Yeah.
But imagine if that instability wasn't a flaw, but a mechanism for instantaneous radical adaptation.
Okay.
It is less like a defect and more like raw, unspecialized stem cells. Or perhaps a lump of highly volatile uranium.
Volatile uranium, that's a great way to put it.
It requires an incredibly specific emotional and environmental centrifuge to stabilize into a permanent form.
So the trainer isn't just feeding them candy to level them up.
No, he is acting as an environmental architect. He's forcing their genetics to crystallize into distinct elemental weapons.
And the naming conventions he chose for this, this crystallized royal court, they are chaotic in the best possible way.
They really are all over the place.
He's stuck strictly to a W naming theme, but the cultural inspirations are just completely unhinged.
Let's actually break down the roster log for a second.
Yeah, please.
So the water type, Vaporeon, was named William. The journal notes this is a direct homage to William Afton from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise.
It's just so creepy. Yeah. Merging a sleek, aquatic creature with the lore of a horrific animatronic serial killer.
It sets a deeply unsettling tone right out of the gate.
It really does.
Then we move to Jolteon, the electric type, named Waldo from Where's Waldo.
Okay, a bit lighter.
Then Flareon, the fire type, named Wallace from the claymation series Wallace and Gromit.
Jeez.
Exactly. And Espeon, the psychic type, named Walter. An homage to Walter White from Breaking Bad.
Wait, I love the Espeon connection.
Oh, why is that?
Because Espeon's whole thing is foresight and psychic chemistry, right? And he names it after a high school chemistry teacher who becomes a ruthless kingpin. It's weirdly fitting.
That is a brilliant connection, actually. It shows a very specific type of media consumption.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the dark type, Umbreon, was named Willy.
Like Steamboat Willie.
Exactly. The journal explicitly references Steamboat Willie, noting the copyright expiration and public domain status as of January 1st, 2024.
That is so specific.
He contrasts the vintage black and white animation with Umbreon's black fur and glowing yellow rings.
The fact that he logged the copyright status of a 1920s cartoon in his manifesto about saving a digital universe. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the hyperfixated nature of this player.
Completely. And then Glacian, the ice type, was named Washington after U.S. President George Washington.
Just casual founding father in there.
Right. Leafeon, the grass type, named Wily after the recurring antagonist Dr. Wily from the Mega Man series.
Which leaves the 8th member.
The fairy type, named Wally.
Inspired by Where's Wally, the international localization of Where's Waldo.
I find this roster completely fascinating. You have a drug lord, a U.S. president, an early animation icon, a child murderer, and 2 guys hiding in striped shirts.
It's quite the dinner party. What is the psychological thread connecting these choices? Like, is there one?
The thread isn't a shared theme among the characters themselves. The thread is the omnipresence of the trainer's own pop cultural footprint.
Oh, I see.
Because of the unstable DNA of the Eevee, the trainer is basically allowed to play God. He is taking this volatile biological clay and impressing his own eclectic cultural desires onto it.
It is an exercise in total administrative control.
Exactly.
And nowhere is that administrative control more terrifying than with Wally.
Oh, absolutely.
We really have to spend some time on Wally. Because this Sylvian isn't just the 8th member of the team.
No, he is the ideological centerpiece of the entire run.
Exactly. What this trainer did to the Sylvian biology completely subverts the established lore of the franchise.
The source material provides a stark contrast between what is known as the hero path and the dark path of evolution for a Sylvian.
Right, because under standard conditions, a mystical hedgehog is catalyzed by a deep, unshakable bond of friendship.
The trainer and the Pokemon must share high affection, typically represented by 2 hearts in the game's mechanics.
Yeah, and the Eevee must learn a fairy-type move, such as baby doll eyes.
The resulting evolution is a creature powered by love. It utilizes its ribbon-like feelers to soothe aggressive auras and spread peace.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the game's core theme. Friendship conquers all. It literally weaponizes pixie dust and empathy.
But our trainer rejected the hero path entirely.
Entirely.
He forced a mutation. The journals refer to it as the dark path.
The dark path.
This male Sylvian did not grow strong through meaningful bonds. It was shaped by silence, by the cold winds of self-reliance, and by a complete absence of comforting companionship.
It's so sad when you think about it.
The trainer deliberately withheld the affection typically required, forcing the Eevee's volatile genetics to adapt to an environment of extreme emotional distance.
And he didn't just withhold affection. He changed the creature's fundamental combat training.
Yes.
Instead of teaching it a fairy-type move, he forced it to master a steel-type move.
Which is insane.
It is, because steel is traditionally the bane of fairies. Steel types are super effective against them.
But by mastering the very element that threatens its existence, the unstable DNA weaponized its own weakness.
And the biological result is chilling.
It really is. The journal describes Wally's ribbons not as soft aura-soothing feelers, but as metallic appendages lined with gleaming, serrated edges.
Serrated edges?
Yes, these are lethal instruments capable of piercing armor and slicing through dragon scales.
It's the difference between a silk ribbon and a bandsaw.
Exactly.
He took the most pastel, delicate creature in the ecosystem and tempered it in the unyielding crucible of solitude.
And the sources highlight a specific environment where this tempering took place, his experience with the fairy garden.
Oh man, the fairy garden.
The concept of the fairy garden in Paldean lore is traditionally a sanctuary. It's meant to be this whimsical, isolated biome teeming with tinkitons and florges, characterized by soft light and playful energy.
Right. But this trainer commandeered a fairy garden in the North Province and just inverted its purpose.
Completely inverted it.
He didn't use it as a sanctuary. He used it as a blood-soaked arena.
Precisely. The journals detail how he isolated Wally within the fairy garden, stripping away all the whimsy and forcing the Sylvian into continuous, grueling combat against the local fairy populace.
He made him fight his own kind.
Yes. The garden became a hyper-lethal training environment. He forced Wally to dismantle his own kind using his serrated steel ribbons, isolating him from the inherent joy of his typing.
It's literal psychological warfare against a digital animal.
It truly is.
He turned a magical meadow into a gladiator pit, just to ensure Wally was completely desensitized to empathy.
And he did this because Wally was being forged for a very specific purpose.
The eradication of apex predators.
The dragon types.
Right. The Sylvian was engineered as a battle-hardened specialist, designed to hunt dragons.
And we usually just accept the rock, paper, scissors mechanics of these games, right?
Yeah, water extinguishes fire, fairy beats dragon. We don't really question it.
But the sources offer a fascinating biological rationale for why the fairy type is super effective against massive fire-breathing leviathans. It's not just magic.
Right. The investigative report features researchers hypothesizing that fairy types are inherently designed as dragon slayers.
Their biology is fueled by an unadulterated courage that borders on spite.
Spite. I love that.
A dragon relies on intimidation and raw physical dominance, but the fairy type possesses a psychological immunity to that intimidation.
Which is also why fairy is super effective against fighting types.
Exactly.
It, quote, outbraves the martial artists, I'm obsessed with that framing.
It's a great way to look at it.
Because the martial artist relies on discipline, and the dragon relies on sheer scale. But the serrated ribbon fairy is just built for the slaughter.
It is a predator wandering the edges of myth, waiting in the dark for a dragon to roar.
By forging Wally in the corrupted fairy garden, the trainer created a mythological slayer perfectly aligned with his cosmic paranoia.
And once this ultimate weapon was honed, the campaign shifted from preparation to total global domination.
Which brings us to the actual execution of his crusade across Paldea. Because he didn't just beat the game.
No, he didn't.
The logs show a systemic obliteration of every dragon type in the region. Online, offline, in terror raid dens. He left nothing uncaught or unfeinted.
The checklists of ruin detailed in the manifesto highlight a profound dissonance between the game's tone and the player's psychology.
Oh, the dissonance is hilarious.
Because to systematically dismantle the Pokemon League, he had to participate in the mandatory gym tests.
I was actually crying laughing reading this section.
Right.
Because you have this god-tier, master ball-housed royal court of sociopathic assassins led by a serrated ribbon dragon slayer. And to fight the grass gym leader, the trainer has to push a giant olive through a maze.
He had to play hide-and-seek with Sunflora.
Yes.
He had to snowboard down Glaciato Mountain.
The juxtaposition of a player operating under a self-imposed apocalyptic delusion while dutifully completing whimsical minigames is just, it's a masterpiece of absurdism.
It really is. But the moment the minigames ended, the absolute subjugation began.
He dismantled the Elite Four and completely stripped the regional champion Gita of her dignity.
But he didn't stop at the League. He went after the localized factions, too.
Right. Operation Starfall.
He systematically humiliated the Team Star bosses, dismantling their entire delinquent infrastructure with his Eevee squad.
And he conquered the Path of Legends, defeating colossal Titan Pokemon and hoarding all the rare Herba Mystica.
The sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and spicy variants.
He essentially monopolized the region's most valuable ecological resources.
And then he aced the Naranja Academy exams. He dominated the ACE tournament and then took his Scorched Earth campaign international.
Let's talk about the DLCs because he didn't hold back there either.
No. In the Kitakami DLC, he subjugated the region's revered deities, the Loyal Three, and claimed dominance over the legendary Ogerpon.
And then traveling to the Blueberry Academy, his all-male evolution roster utterly demolished the Blueberry Elite Four.
And shattered Champion Kieran's confidence.
It's an unbroken streak of unchecked power.
It is.
But amidst all of this cosmic domination, there was one recurring, incredibly terrestrial obstacle.
A singular, relentless nuisance that haunted his journals.
The penny stalking incident.
Yes. Penny.
So, for you listening, Penny is a core character in the Paldea narrative. She is a fellow evolution enthusiast, instantly recognizable by her starry backpack and her background in hacking.
And according to the trainer's logs, as news of his Eevee-exclusive reign of terror spread, Penny became entirely unhinged.
She saw his master ball-caught, hyper-optimized royal court, and it completely short-circuited her brain.
She began tracking his every movement across the continent.
The trainer notes that her presence transitioned from coincidental encounters to desperate, obsessive stalking.
She demanded he join her team, attempting to assert dominance using her own lineup of standard evolutions.
And this is where the Sonic 06 metaphors come rushing back in, right? Because how did he describe her?
He explicitly compared her to Amy Rose.
Oh, man.
In the Sonic universe, Amy Rose is characterized by her endless, unrequited, and often obnoxious pursuit of Sonic.
So to the trainer, Penny was the Amy Rose of Paldea.
Exactly. Oblivious, hopelessly outclassed, and wielding a vastly inferior roster.
Because she represents the hero path of the fandom.
Right.
She loves Eevees in the wholesome, socially acceptable way the developers intended. She probably feeds them berries and takes them on picnics.
And to a trainer operating under cosmic certainty, her casual enjoyment is deeply offensive.
It's an insult to his apocalyptic stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every time she used her hacking skills to corner him, trying to out-Eevee the self-proclaimed savior of the universe, he responded with overwhelming force.
He didn't just beat her.
No.
He crushed her team purposefully to remind her of her place at the absolute bottom of the food chain.
It wasn't a rivalry for him. It was ideological subjugation.
It is a brilliant distillation of parasocial fanaticism within a community.
It really is. Two people can love the exact same thing, in this case, the Eevee species, but the radical extremist must destroy the moderate to validate their own fanaticism.
Penny wasn't a threat to his gameplay. She was a threat to his narrative reality.
Exactly. Ideological subjugation in a game rated for everyone.
It makes you wonder what the average NPC in Paldea was thinking as this guy scorched the earth.
Which brings us perfectly to the cultural shockwave detailed in the Paldea News Network exclusive report.
Yes, the PNN report. Because they treat the trainer's campaign not as a series of game mechanics, but as a severe sociological crisis.
The headline of the investigative piece literally reads, "Savior or Sociopath? The Eevee-Only extremist who shook the region."
The capital city, Mesagoza, is depicted as being in a state of unprecedented cultural fracture.
The report details mass hysteria sweeping through the trainer population.
Like, on one side, you have a radicalized emulation movement.
Trainers are desperately hoarding Eevees, attempting to replicate his uncompromising methodology.
They have adopted his manifesto, viewing him as the undisputed savior of the ecosystem.
But the backlash is even more fascinating.
I think so too, because the people who see him as an egotistical maniac are actively revolting against the symbol of his crusade.
The PNN outlines a severe cultural rejection of the Eevee species.
Which is wild for Pokemon.
It is. Trainers who previously loved the evolution Pokemon are abandoning them.
Releasing them into the wild.
Or surrendering them en masse to research laboratories.
They are desperate to physically and socially distance themselves from the extremist ideology now associated with the creature.
It's incredible. One person's hyper-fixated obsession permanently ruined a fluffy, universally beloved mascot for an entire region.
It mirrors the real-world phenomenon of symbol co-optation, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. When a radicalized subculture or a highly visible extremist adopts a benign symbol like a cartoon character, a piece of clothing, a meme, the original meaning of that symbol is eradicated.
So the Eevee went from a representation of limitless potential to a symbol of cosmic paranoia and dictatorial dominance.
The people of Paldea will literally never look at an Eevee the same way again.
The trainer didn't just beat the game's code. He broke its cultural meaning and rebuilt it in his own terrifying image.
And the social and ecological shockwaves left by this one specific save file fundamentally rewrite the way we understand player agency.
He proved that you can weaponize the mechanics of a children's game to author a psychological horror story.
It is a profound testament to the wild, unrestrained power of the human imagination when handed a digital sandbox.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today, unpacking this May 17th, 2026 save file.
We really have.
I mean, we navigated the psychological transference of Sonic 06 paranoias onto Paldea.
We explored the logistical empire required to secure 999 Master Balls.
We dissected the extreme luxury of rejecting the shiny variant.
And analyzed the biological implications of Eevee's unstable DNA, likening it to volatile uranium requiring precise environmental centrifuges.
We analyzed the royal court, breaking down the chaotic pop culture cocktail of names like William Afton and George Washington.
We explored the twisted fairy garden that forged Wally into a serrated ribbon dragon slayer on the dark path.
And we witnessed the tragic, Amy Rose-esque subjugation of Penny, culminating in a society so deeply fractured that the Eevee itself became a polarizing symbol of sociopathic extremism.
Which leaves us with a final thought.
Yes. A question for you to mull over after this deep dive ends.
We've spent this time analyzing a player who overlaid a dark, apocalyptic, rigidly structured narrative onto a colorful, sunny world designed for relaxation.
He projected his own severe stakes onto a system that didn't inherently possess them.
Exactly.
So what hidden rules, superstitions, or self-imposed narratives are you projecting onto the systems in your life?
Whether it's the games you play, the media you consume, or even the unwritten rules you follow in your workplace or daily routine.
We all bring our own psychological lenses to our environments.
We all construct our own stakes to combat the banality of our daily mastery.
So the next time you load up a save file, or walk into a meeting room, or scroll through a feed, take a second to ask yourself, are you just playing the game? Or is the game playing you?
That's a great question to leave on.
Thank you for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive into these incredible sources. Keep asking questions, keep looking for those aha moments, and above all, keep diving deep.